Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Jenkins from Boston Housing Authority PD in Massachusetts. He has 22 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Jenkins.
Well, thank you, Paige. It's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion.
Of course, I'm looking forward to it as well. So give us a little bit of background. 22 years total. What was your life like before law enforcement, and what has your career looked like so far?
All right, so we'll go chronologically. So we'll start from before law enforcement. I did not want to be a police officer. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I was a college athlete, and I thought I was going to take the path that most college athletes take, where I was going to, finish up my time playing, maybe try to play a little bit after college, and then go right into like the coaching track. That's
Mm.
where I was. That was my goal. I did that for a little bit, and I realized that coaches don't make any money whatsoever. So after working four different jobs to try to maintain some sort of a lifestyle while I was coaching, I went into sales for a little while, and I actually thought that that was going to be my track. And I'll tell you this, Paige, I didn't know it at the time, but the sales training has been probably one of the best things I did to prepare myself for law enforcement, because it gives you the ability to, connect with people in a short amount of time. It gives you the ability to read people. And one of the things I like to tell people is, with every call for service, a sale is made. Either you can sell the people that you're dealing with as to why they should either de-escalate, or why they should try an alternative approach, or they sell you on on why you're going to have to maybe take them into custody. So so that sales training has been extremely beneficial. Then from there, I got into law enforcement in my late 20s, because quite frankly, I got tired of not knowing how much money I was going to make from week to week, because a lot of sales jobs are commission based.
Yeah.
And when you have a great when you have a great month, then sales are great. It's the best job in the world. But when you have a bad month, a down month, it can be really challenging for just even the most basic things like eating from day to day, like being able to figure all that out. So I kind of stumbled into law enforcement. Again, just kind of looked at it like I just wanted a steady paycheck and benefits. But let me tell you something, when I got on into this line of work and I realized how many people, particularly people that look like me, needed somebody to advocate for them, and they needed somebody to, that could identify what it was like to be on that side of the equation,
Mm.
but wanted somebody that could police with some empathy and some understanding. There was a natural synergy there, and I fell in love, and here I am.
Wow. There's a few things I actually want to circle back to that I think are really interesting, and I can see Jess shaking her head too. The first thing I want to talk about is you being an athlete, a college athlete. You wanted to be on the track of coaching, and you had some experience coaching. Do you draw a lot of parallels between athletics and law enforcement?
That's a great question. So, I guess subconsciously, yes, I do. It's not something that I talk about often, but there's some natural there's a natural synergy between the athletic process and being in law enforcement. So, for example, we all know that the hiring process to get into law enforcement it's rigorous,
Hmm.
and so being a good student is certainly helpful when you have to test, or if you have to study certain materials in order to get on a job. Your ability to multitask, your ability to keep appointments, because again, like you might have a psychological one day, and then you have a physical test, and then you have to meet with your own physician to get signed off on. You have to do a drug screening, and you have to keep track of all those dates plus your interviews, and you gotta you got to be on time for your interviews, and it sounds like it's a no-brainer, but in today's world, like, we do have some folks that seem to struggle being able to balance all of that.
Hmm.
Now, if you talk about the athletic piece, making it through the academy is something you do have to have some semblance of athleticism to make it through a police academy. It's rigorous. It's a lot of it's very heavy running, which I don't necessarily agree with, that it should be quite as heavy running as it tends to be. I think that there's other ways that you could measure someone's physical abilities uh, that are more realistic for the job. So, for example, like my first police academy, we did a 10 and a quarter mile run at the end. Now you can't see me, but I'm 225 pounds, and when I got to my first academy, I was 290 pounds.
Hmm.
So I'm not meant to run 10 and a quarter miles, like I'm not built for that, but I was pretty strong and I was, decent in the weight room. I was good with defensive tactics and things like that. So, and those at the time in 2006 weren't as valued as they are today. So, again, the ability to be athletic, the ability to bounce back from minor injuries and bumps and bruises, the ability to know the difference between what I would say to my children, an owie and an injury. An owie is something like you stub your toe and it hurts a little bit, but you're not injured. And then something where you're legitimately injured, like I broke my hand in my first academy, and just being able to manage that and still stick with the academy and make it through. I credit sports, particularly football, with giving me the ability and the mental toughness to kind of make it through some of those tough times.
Yeah, there are a lot of chiefs that I've talked to who are really questioning the standards right now. And I've heard it time and time again where they're like, where are we ever going to run a half mile or a mile? Like, probably not a lot, if ever. They're like, but we do short sprints, right? So, how can we train some things that are going to be more job specific? We do a lot of pushing, pulling. So, they're changing. There's a lot of chiefs out there that are changing what that physical fitness standard looks like in the academy, but then also continued education because of this conversation of like, when are we ever going to see that in the actual day to day of the career? And how can we adjust ourselves to be more effective? So I appreciate you bringing that up. I would also imagine that coming from a team environment, it's helpful. Coming into law enforcement, you know how to be a team player. You know how to pick up someone when they're, fallen down, and you know how to take accountability for things and be like, my bad. And so I think there's a lot of things that are really relatable. But I also think that, you wanting to be a coach when you were younger, now you are the coach. You're the head of an organization. You're the coach, right? And
Yeah, yeah, I
so
did.
so you did it in a different way, but you did it. I actually did like a funny presentation recently. I was talking to a bunch of chiefs, and they were in Texas. So I asked, how many of you are Dallas Cowboys fans? How many of you are Houston Texan fans? And it was like 50-50 split. So I was like, all right, you guys get the choice. You can be Chief Schottenheimer or Chief Ryans. You can choose. And I took them through this whole scenario, and I said, imagine that you are the head coach in the NFL. And this is a special season because you don't have a backup. You don't have a bench. You only have your starting players. And your starting players are coming to practice every day exhausted. Some are hungover. They're living off of 4 energy drinks a day. They're eating 7-Eleven hot dogs with every meal. And they're never, ever warming up before they hit the field. And I was like, okay, now fast forward, it's game day. You got 70,000 fans in the stands, and they're counting on you. It's the first play, first snap of the game. Quarterback throws long. Your wide receiver goes and pulls a hamstring immediately. Now remember, you don't have a backup. You don't have a bench. So what happens? Everyone starts like trying to like pick up for that person, and just as the game goes on, people slowly start deteriorating. And then I was like, now to today, we're here in this room. You guys are the coaches. And a lot of the things that I just said are things that we're seeing within the organization, right? We're seeing people who aren't eating well, really over caffeinated. They're not warming up. We're seeing injuries, and we're asking ourselves why these things are happening. And so I draw parallels to sports, of like, the NFL would never do that. So how can we introduce training methods that are specific to law enforcement and that are effective so that we can make sure that your people are healthy, and that those 70,000 fans that are in the stands, that's the community in which you serve, and so that you are on, top of your game so that you can win the game. You can achieve that mission that you're looking for. And so I just did this funny little thing, but I think everyone resonated with that of like, yeah, like we are the coach, and how do we make sure that we protect our assets and your people are your assets?
So there was a lot in there. So let me take little bites. Um, so I love that analogy between like a sports team and having position specific people, because again, any healthy organization, you do have position specific personnel.
Mhm.
Um, we all we talk about diversity. Diversity is a word that gets thrown around a lot, And there's the obvious diversity, which is diversity of race and ethnicity and sexual orientation and you name it. Like that's the obvious diversity. But the one that doesn't get talked about enough, Paige, is diversity of mind and diversity of thought.
Hmm.
Having people that have different strengths and doing round peg round hole. Having people that have diverse ways of attacking a problem, like that doesn't get talked about enough. And in your scenario where you have a football team and you only have one deep on the roster, the answer to that question is, you lose your wide receiver with a strained hamstring. You said is now you have to have the mental agility to switch tactics on the fly, right? So like you don't have that wide receiver. Okay, I guess we're throwing short passes to the tight end, and then we're
Hmm.
picking up some run plays. We're doing inside and out, maybe an occasional play action. I can get real deep with football talk. But
I figured that's why I went there.
yeah. So you essentially you have to change tactics and change your game plan on the fly, and that's a very real thing that we have to do day in and day out, particularly in a smaller agency.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I was just like got really excited when you said that you were in athletics and I was like, let's go here. Let's talk about, how we can support everyone and how we can make sure that everyone's operating as a team. And I think that, every chief I talk to agrees that you guys are all a team. So I appreciate you saying this is how we're able to adjust so that we can still operate as a team.
Absolutely, and then to touch on that a little bit more, one of the things we try to do here is we try to what I would call eliminating single points of failure. So I
Mm,
used to work with a guy, and he used to say that, and it's such a great term because a lot of times in law enforcement organizations, you have like that one guy or that one woman, and they kind of hoard all of the information that's in a particular silo, and then
yeah.
that person goes on vacation or they get out injured, and everything has to come to a grinding halt because if they're not there, then that's where all the information is.
Mhm.
So when you have a smaller agency, just in order to survive, you have to create backups for certain people. So I'm looking at a board right now in our conference room, and like in black letter, that is anything in black lettering is the primary duty and responsibility for that person, and then anything in green means that they are a backup for somebody else for that very reason. So when you're in a smaller agency, you have to create what I would call a generalist, and
Mhm.
you have less specialists in smaller organizations. So that would also speak to your scenario about what would happen if that wide receiver goes down. You would certainly have people, they might not be as good or they might not be as up to speed, but they should be at least be able to be, fluent, if you will, in some of these other disciplines to help out.
Yeah, and to your point of what you said, diversity earlier, having diversity in skill set.
Yeah, it's huge,
Yeah.
and I'll say it also speaks to. I'm sure we're going to get to this, but job satisfaction. When people feel like they are part of the solution and they've been trained and they've been empowered to be part of a solution, you tend to get a little bit happier of a workforce. Sometimes in police work, we get a bad rap about like police departments have a few folks that if you gave them $100, they'd probably complain about the denomination of the bills. You know what I mean? There's always some people that are like that, but when you have people that are involved and well trained, they tend to be a little more solution orientated.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you pulled it back into job satisfaction, morale, and I would guess that that also plays into retention. The more that people feel like they're a part of the agency and that they're valued and that they're poured into, because you're pouring into them. If you're teaching them a diverse level of skill sets and knowledge, then they know that you're investing in them. Then I would imagine that they would want to stay, or that would contribute to them wanting to stay.
So, Paige, I like to think that contributes to people wanting to stay, but this generation it's a little different than mine was. My generation, for example, with me, and I worked at a bunch of different departments, but for me, I didn't get a true specialty assignment until I had like double digit years on the job. Like
Mhm.
that's just kind of the way it was. You came in and it was kind of like, all right, kid, you shut up, you do your time, And when your number's called, that's when you'll get an opportunity to do something extra. But if you look at, even if you look at all the different job postings for police departments, what do they put right out front? We have SWAT, we have K9, we have drug lab, we have this, we have that. And to me, I don't do that here. I just tell people, like, you're going to come in, you're going to be in patrol. Like, there's no two ways about it. You're going to be in patrol when you come in. But if you master that patrol job, you're going to have other opportunities, and you'll have them quickly. That's the only promise I'll make. The other way, when you put all that stuff up front, and I've seen this firsthand, you have people that come in and they think that they're going to graduate the academy and they're going to report to duty, and I'm going to hand them a SWAT helmet and say, congratulations, you're in SWAT. And that's just, it really does set people up for a bit of disappointment when they realize that they have to do the patrol job for a while, and it's not what was promised to them. Even though patrol, it really can be a great time and it can be a great learning experience, but when they're promised something that seems a little sexier based on societal norms and what they see on TV, sometimes it can create a bit of a disconnect with folks.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of setting realistic expectations, and then under promising, over delivering always. And so I think that's exactly what you're talking about is like, hey, like this is what's going to happen. And then if you can promote quickly or if you can do those things, like great, but you're not promising that up front. You're telling them this is the reality of it. And I think that and I don't I don't know when I turned into the older generation, but here we are. I'm here now. I feel like when I was younger, and I don't know if this is because maybe we didn't have technology in the same way that we do now, and things were not instant gratification when I was growing up. I think there was an understanding that it's going to take you a while to get to where you want to go. And there was kind of this like excitement around it, at least for me. Like I loved the training part of it. I loved the journey it took to get there. And I feel like now, because we're so used to like ordering something on Amazon and it being there in 4 hours, that like we expect that gap to be closed a little bit. I say this to people all the time, and we can bring it back to sports. But do you think that Tom Brady got there overnight? No, it took him years and years and years of grinding it out and doing drills over and over and over again in order for him to get to where he is today. It didn't happen overnight. And so I think that we have to remind people that the beauty's in the journey. How can you enjoy the process of learning and the process of becoming an expert in what you do, and have a little bit more, I hate to say patience because it sounds so lame, but you do have to have a little bit of patience when it comes, or a lot of bit of patience when it comes to these things. So I really am a big fan of setting realistic expectations, and people understanding what it's going to take in order to achieve the things that they want to long term.
So I like a few things you said there. First of all, I want to call you out for saying the word lame. So I don't know. All right, so maybe it does sound lame because clearly I'm older than you are. So for me, patience, that expression, patience is a virtue. It is a virtue, and patience is something that's required. Like we do live in the age of instant gratification. Like I was explaining to my kids what an encyclopedia was.
Mm.
Like that's where we are right now. Like my kids have no concept of an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And I remember, growing up I grew up in a middle income family, and my father was able to provide enough for us to be able to get our first set of Funk and Wagnall's encyclopedias. And it was a big deal because now we didn't have to go to the library to do our reports, and we could stay home and do it. And then a few years later, he was able to get something called a word processor, which was, but I mean, again, I would mention that to my kids. They'd look at me like I was out of my mind. They're like, "Dad, so you had a computer that did nothing but just type?" Yeah, we did that, and we were thankful for it. So I think as time goes on, we've created a more impatient
Mhm.
person. We've created a person. I hate to say it, this is going to sound lame. We've created a more entitled person, where people feel like like they have some sort of natural right where they just, without with the minimal amount of work, they think that they're owed or deserved certain things. So, so I don't think it's lame at all what you were saying earlier about patience.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I was, and I don't know, I think you know this, that I was a professional skydiver like back in the day. Um,
Okay.
and
I
it
love
was,
that reaction.
I've had a lot of lives. I feel like a cat. I have like 9 lives, like I've
Mm.
had a lot of different chapters in my life, but um, it was it was exciting for me to be new. Like I knew I had my eye on the prize. I knew where I wanted to go. But like every opportunity I had to learn and to get better and to seek mentors and training, like to me, that was the best part of it. The achievements were only really sweet because of the effort that it took to get there. If someone handed me, like I did a world record, a Guinness World Record, I was training military EOD, like I was very advanced in what I did. And if someone handed that to me day one, I'd be like, cool, sweet. But like there was no blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. But because there were the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, when I finally achieved it, I was like, wow, like all of the hard work was worthwhile. And I feel like our conversations and what we share with the younger generation, we almost need to make that part more attractive of like, hey, I promise you when you get that promotion or when you are handed, the opportunity to be on SWAT, that it's going to be so sweet and so worth it because of the patience and the time and the training and the blood, sweat, and tears it took to get there.
So, gift and a curse. The gift that you're giving them is the knowledge of what you know to be true based on your experiences. That's the gift. Now, the curse is there's going to be somebody else down the block that's offering them the same thing in half the time.
Yeah.
So trying to navigate that is extremely tricky.
Yeah.
And another personal thing that I do that people on my team don't always agree with, and certainly other chiefs might not agree with this. I don't beg people to stay.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to pause there because people, because we're all starving for people and this, that, and the other thing. I don't do that. I had the good fortune of learning a lesson when I was in college. I was really close with my defensive coordinator, and so I like in between classes, I would go down to the football office, and at the time he was a younger man too. Maybe he's probably like 5 or 6 years older than me, and he was taking classes. So I would go down there and we would watch game film together. And we would, while we were doing that, we became, appropriate friends considering he was my coach, but we were friends and we would talk about things. And I used to ask him, well, like this person quit. Why didn't you talk to this person? Or this person said they'd come out for the team and didn't. And he goes, you know what, Dino? He said, I'm going to tell you something. He goes, I don't do that because when you have to talk somebody into doing something for you, they're guaranteed to let you down when you need them the most.
Mhm.
And that has stuck with me. And here I am. I mean, we're talking 28, 29 years later. And that is as true today as it was when he told me that. Because again, like when you have to talk people into doing things, or if you have to, if you have somebody that is trying to force you to give them some sort of specialized assignment or something, like I'll stay if you give me this. They're essentially holding a gun up to your head,
Yeah.
and if you're not, if you don't give them what they want, they're threatening to leave your organization and to devastate your organization. I would rather just say, hey, listen, like if this is not a good fit for you, I get it. It's a very unique style of policing we have here. All I ask is that you're upfront with me, like I was with you when you came here, and if you do all the right things when you leave, like you'll leave with a friend, and if you
Yeah.
don't, you won't.
Yeah. And I think this conversation has come up a few times on the podcast, not in the same way, but in the context of, how do we make sure it's the right people who are butts in the seat and not just anybody? And I think a lot of chiefs, even though most people are short-handed right now, are falling into that same mindset of we want people who are contributing to the team. We want people who want to be here. We want people who have a positive attitude because we know negativity is so toxic to a team environment, and we're not willing to just have anybody here. And so I think that a lot of chiefs are starting to have those conversations about how do we set the standard and how do we uphold the standard and how do we make sure that everyone who is here is the best person for the job. So I maybe there are people who disagree, but I think more people would agree with how do we get the right people?
Yeah, I think in my experience, the same is true. Like if someone doesn't want to be there, there's no reason to force them to be there because it's not going to end well, and ultimately it's not going to add any value to your culture.
Yeah.
Just you're spot on. I call that a hostage. Like, who wants a hostage in their organization? Like, I do not want to feel like, I don't want you coming to work acting like I'm holding you here against your will. I'd rather be a bit shorthanded and have people that want to be here and we're all rowing in the same direction than have somebody that feels literally like, like I'm again, like a hostage. Like, I have them here against their will, and I'm ransoming some sort of opportunity in order to keep them here. It just isn't worth it. I think that, the hiring process is huge. I think you have, not, I think, I know that you need to lean into some of what are some of the pitfalls of your job? So every job has things that are really great about it, and you have things that are not so great about it. My style is I lean into the things that are not great about this job right off the front, right up front. I'll tell people, like, we have this challenge and we have that challenge, and I just want to be honest and upfront with you about that. And then I get into what's great about being here, because I don't want anybody to ever say they came here and that I pulled the wool over their eyes, or somebody on my staff pulled the wool over their eyes. Like, I want everybody to come over here with their eyes wide open to what this job is, and most importantly, what this job is not.
I like that you acknowledge those challenges up front because that's important to people. And if you're telling them that there's not going to be challenges or you don't highlight those right away, it leaves out some of the authenticity that you're providing.
Well, again, what it does, Jess, it sets me up to be branded a liar. Like,
Right.
as soon as they
Yeah.
get here and they hit one of those foreseeable bumps in the road, or a better way to look at it, if we go back to my sales experience, if they hit something that's perceived to be fine print, right, like that wasn't spoken about,
Yeah.
that maybe should have been, then it's very difficult to ever be seen as a trusted person
Mhm.
in the eyes of that employee again. Like, once you lose that, I'm not saying it's impossible to get it back, but I am going to say it's really difficult.
I think trust is one of the biggest things, and I think that when it comes to longevity and it comes to a team mentality and wanting to achieve all the things that you want to achieve within an organization, the mission, there has to be a foundation of trust. And I think that a lot of organizations struggle with that.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's been exacerbated by the state of hiring. You have a lot of folks that never wanted to be a salesperson and never wanted to be somebody who had to try to, like, sell an opportunity to people. And we're finding ourselves at a crossroads where we have to sell an opportunity, because, make no mistake about it, every chief has to sell the opportunity to somebody. Gone are the days where you say, you put something in a newspaper or on a flyer and say, we're having an exam at this date and time, sign up by this date, and then you get 10,000 applicants. I don't know where it is and where you are in the country, but it's certainly not that way here anymore.
Mhm.
So you do have to sell the opportunity, but how you sell it is everything. And quite frankly, people that are turned off by how I sell it are people that I know most likely wouldn't work here anyway.
Yeah. It's obvious to me that leadership is something that is really important to you, and it seems like it's something that you do really well. What is the greatest skill set that you think a leader must have in order to be successful? And it can be informal or formal leader, but what is the most important skill set in your opinion?
Oh, Paige, you're going to limit me to just one, huh? Um,
You
all
can
right.
give me multiple. We can do bonus ones.
Well, I mean, this is all about discipline and following following directives. So I will give you one. If I have to narrow it down to one, I would say at the top of my list at this moment as I sit is the ability to embrace the fact that you don't always have to be the smartest person in a room.
Mm.
It's okay to let other people have good ideas. It's okay to let other people take the lead from time to time. It's okay that if you send somebody to a training, even though I might outrank them on my badge, but if they're the subject matter expert, why not let them take the lead? Why else would you have sent them to the training? Why else? You know what I mean? If people, why else would you have hired somebody that has, I don't know, like an accounting degree and not let them maybe help you with your budget? Or why would hire somebody that used to be a mechanic and has a passion for cars? Why not let them help out with your fleet maintenance program?
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the most important things. I think it's a big miss because I've certainly worked for a lot of. I've had some great chiefs and some great supervisors, but I've had some ones that weren't so great. And the biggest difference is the ones that were great were the ones that made you feel, again, like we talked about earlier, they made you feel like you were part of the solution and you had a seat at the table. The ones that weren't so great, at least for me, were the ones that, where it was their way or the highway and no idea was a good idea unless it was their idea.
Yeah.
I found it tough to work for those folks.
Yeah. While you were talking, I had a question. This is where my brain went. So
Sure.
let me know if you're following my brain. But I asked myself, does that actually make you then the smartest person in the room? If you have the ability to understand that you are not the smartest and you have the ability to highlight and showcase other people who are better than you, then does that actually make you the smartest? Because to me, that's smart. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you lean on people who have expertise in other areas and understand that, like, hey, like I know a lot, but I don't know everything, and I can delegate and I can lean on other people. Does that actually make you the smartest? I don't know.
So we can get super nerdy here, and I'm happy to
Yeah.
do. So I think it depends on what your definition of smart is. Um, is there a separation between being smart and having a high degree of emotional intelligence? Because I think it's the latter. I think it's really more about emotional intelligence and the ability to regulate your ego and to have a bit of humility, as opposed to me being smart per se. Like my ability or my desire to let people take the lead when they're prepared and they're skilled in doing so. I don't think that would get me into Harvard, but it might have me be able to run an organization that runs a little smoother and a little more cohesive than someone who might be a little more book smart than me and always has to be the guy or the woman that has all the answers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that response. And I think you're right. We probably could do a whole nother podcast where we just like dive into all like the nerdy things because I think we would be on the same wavelength. But yeah, it's like which one is smarter in quotes, like book smart, street smart, emotional intelligence versus, XYZ. So I think that we could go down there. But I think that what you just said about emotional intelligence and regulating your ego and letting people shine, I think that's a part of emotional regulation. I think that's a part of wellness as a whole. And so I think everything that we've talked about so far really has fallen in the two buckets of wellness and leadership. So I appreciate you giving your perspective on that. And I really, actually really liked that answer. So thank you.
Right. Well, I'm glad. I'm like a broken clock page. I have like two good ideas a day, so maybe that was
Yeah.
one of
Yeah, I would probably have I have two a week or a month. So
them.
you're ahead of me. Thank you.
With that, what words of wisdom do you have for the younger generation?
Oh boy. So the first thing that comes to mind, Jess, is live within your means and make sure that if you're getting into this line of work and you have a significant other, make sure you make them part of the journey and you don't freeze them out. So there's a book that I think should be required reading at the academy level. It's I believe it's called Emotional Intelligence by Dr. Kilmartin, I believe, and it's a pretty popular book in this line of work. But I think it should be more upfront. It should be more prominent at in the academy setting, because it does set you up for what I think is the best way to go about this job. You know, when you have a significant other, and you stop trying to, protect them from some of the ugliness of the job, what you do is you essentially you stop talking to them, because you have days, and there's going to be times where you're going to hear, smell, feel, see, excuse me, and in a very tough circumstance, maybe even taste or have something on you that's extremely unpleasant. And when you don't share those feelings that you have as a result of that, and you just shut down, and you develop these mental calluses all over your being, it can make it difficult to have a partnership with somebody. Because make no mistake about it, when you go to work, your family is this. They're on their fringes too. They're on their emotional edge of their seat as well. So it's not just you that's suiting up and going to work. At some degree, they are as well. So you got to bring them along with you. So I would tell all the new folks, involve your partners early and often. And if that partner decides that it's not for them, then they might have did you a favor. As difficult as that is to hear, if you decide that this is what you want to do, and you're going to do it no matter who your partner is, and you tell somebody what's going on, and they don't want to hear it, or they're shutting you down, in police work, we call that a clue. That might not be the person for you, considering that this is your career path. So, with divorce rates in law enforcement, it's got to be up over 70%. These are things that you got to think about, so you can have both emotional well-being, and the less talked about financial well-being, and then of course psychological well-being and safety.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, living beneath your means and looking for those clues. I think this has been a really good conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Chief Jenkins.
I'm honored to be here. And again, anytime you folks want to talk, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Thank you for thinking of me.
Yeah, we might have to do a round 2 someday. Appreciate it.
All right. Sounds good.